difference between GameStop and silver. There really is a global shortage of silver. But not only that is the value, the intrinsic value, the real value of silver is about to go up with the Green New Deal, with electric cars, with medicines and all this. And there is this major silver short. And the people that ultimately want the silver never disclose that they want it. So we still don't know who's squirming out there, because there's companies like Toshiba, Sony, Apple, and Tesla. They all need silver, but nobody's saying how much they need. So we don't know how bad the shortage is. So with that, Peter, what is the real value of silver in industry?
Well, I mean, silver has tremendous value in industry. That's why it's money. You know, people forget, with all the hysteria about Bitcoin, that money has to have intrinsic value. Money has to be a commodity. That's what money is. It's the most marketable, most liquid commodity. That's why it's a store of value. The reason that silver is a store of value is because you're storing all of the things that you can do with the silver after you melt it down, right? That's what you're storing. And so silver is very valuable metal. I mean, at one point, yeah, they used a lot of it in photography, and people were saying, oh, you know, well, now there's no more film, so who's going to need silver? But meanwhile, there's plenty of other uses for silver out there as a conductor of electricity. It's used in the automotive industry, along with a lot of, copper and nickel are also in demand for electric vehicles, for the batteries that operate them. But there are all sorts of applications for silver. There's even more for gold. The problem is gold is so expensive that in many cases they substitute silver for gold or copper for gold because they can't afford the gold. I mean, if they could, they would use gold. But it's too expensive. But in certain areas where you absolutely need the best, they buy gold. I mean, gold is used in chips and all sorts of things.
Just one more thing is gold does not disappear. Silver is used up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain percentage that goes short every year. And I'm not sure on the numbers, but I was listening, I think Keith Neumeyer of First Majestic, he was saying that there's only 80% of the silver required that's available. They're what, that 20% short every year now, because market's getting tougher and tougher and tougher. Electronic vehicles, solar panels, medicine. It just keeps increasing in value because it's an industrial metal, as well as a precious metal, as well as a commodity.
And that's why it doesn't make sense that it really is so cheap in relation to gold. Yeah. Because, you can buy a lot of silver for an ounce of gold, which is why we've been encouraging people, even at Schiff Gold, to use some of their gold to buy silver. Like, hey, you don't have any silver, take some of your gold and buy some silver with it.
Right.
Because you're going to end up with a lot of extra ounces. And eventually you might be able to sell the silver and buy your gold back and get a lot more gold than you started with, because the price of silver has gone way up. But, while I'm mentioning, a thing like Bitcoin, I mean, Bitcoin has a lot more in common with GameStop than it does with gold or silver, right? Because it's the same concept, pump and dump, greater fool theory. You're buying something that has no value. But just because it's gone up, everybody thinks that they've, rediscovered, the wheel or something. Like, oh my God, you see, it works because the price went up. Look, because the price of GameStop went from $10 to $500, that doesn't change the nature of that business. They're not making any more money in their malls than they were before. It's the same failed business. And Bitcoin at 30,000 is the same Bitcoin at $3. There's no fundamental difference other than the fact that more people own it and they've been willing to buy it. But why are people buying GameStop? Because they think somebody else will pay them more.
Right.
Why are people buying Bitcoin? Because they think somebody else will pay them more. Why am I buying silver? Because I know somebody's going to need it.
Right.
Because it's used in industry.
Right.
And I'm going to store the silver because the people who need the silver are going to pay a lot of money to get mine.
Right.
But nobody needs Bitcoin. It's only because you want to speculate in it.
Yeah. For full disclosure, I own a lot of Bitcoin too. I'm not.
Yeah, well, nobody's perfect. Yep. But you know what? If you sell them now, you could laugh all the way to the bank, right? Because anybody who bought Bitcoin, who sells their Bitcoin, can make fun of me for not buying it. But if you bought your Bitcoin and you don't sell, I'm going to be the one making fun of you for not selling, because then you're going to end up as a bag holder.
now because the real problem is the dollar.
I agree. But the dollar is a problem because it has no fundamental value.
Right.
It's only backed by faith.
Right.
And that's the same thing. That's the same problem Bitcoin has.
Right.
That's why I want something real. I want real money, right? You call it God's money, but that's what I want. I want the real deal. I don't want some new iteration of fool's gold.
Right. And also, Peter, I've built a gold mine in China, which I'll never do again because they took it. And
they took it because it was valuable.
Yeah. Well, and then I also built a silver mine in Argentina, and unfortunately my stockbroker said to sell it, so I sold it. And I'll never listen to those guys again. You know what I mean? I know what I love. Gold and silver are God's money, and I call Bitcoin people's money. So can we talk about how GameStop is going to affect pensions? Because this is a book I wrote with my friend Ted Siddell, Who Stole My Pension.
Yeah.
And this came out in January of 2020, so a year now.
Well,
and my concern is they're going to have to print more fake dollars simply because the pensions are bust, and their pensions are stuffed with stuff like GameStop.
Well, to the extent that any pensions own GameStop, they just got lucky. They won the lottery. Because I'm sure if you're a pension manager and you made the mistake of buying GameStop and now you get a get out of jail free card, it's like you won so they're selling. So there's probably more pensions that are going to benefit from GameStop because now they're going to get out. It's these little investors, not the pensions, that are buying. The pensions are run by more sophisticated guys who are fiduciaries. They're not buying, they're selling. But the pensions in general are woefully underfunded. They're investing in the equivalent of GameStop. Just, GameStop is like, the extreme example. But the whole market is overpriced. You have all sorts of companies that have crazy pie in the sky multiples that have no earnings, that are overvalued just like GameStop. And people are paying ridiculous prices for them. Like everybody talks about Tesla. I mean, Tesla, they make some nice cars. But I mean, the stock price, it has no bearing on any potential value of that business.
Right.
But nobody cares because people keep buying the stock. And there's all sorts of Teslas out there. They're not as big and extreme, and they're not as an extreme as GameStop. But all the pensions are loaded up with overpriced stocks. The reason was because the Fed forced interest rates down so low that the pension funds could not get a return on bond portfolios, which is what they should have. So they had to go really out on the risk curve. They had to basically take it all to the casino and roll the dice and hope for the best, because there was no way to deliver the returns that they were promising with 0% interest rates. So now they're all in overpriced stocks. They're going to crash. The pensions are broke. And you know what? The government supposedly guarantees all this pensions. Well, the government is broke too. So all the money is going to be printed, which means none of it is going to have any value, which is why I buy gold and silver now.